Well, I'm sitting on my new sofa. It's called April, and part of a suite of furniture. And it's there's an interesting background to it, I think, which is that I've done a great deal of furniture in my working life, but in the past few years I've been asked to do some pieces, and the first piece was from a firm who really make their business selling modern furniture. Ipso facto, it's much more architectural, you know, like slabs and nice geometry and so on, good looking, but not principally to do with comfort. And that's my obsession, and as you get older you get more and more obsessed with that. So my first chair was for a firm called Hitchmelius, and it is distinctively and overtly comfortable, but of course it sits quite awkwardly in the whole spectrum of modern furniture. So when client number 2 comes along, which is a firm called Modus, and asked me to design a sofa, I said, well, I'd love to do it, but you do understand that I'm going to be really persistent with regard to comfort, which means that it's going to be a bit higher, not a lot higher, but a bit higher, and a little bit shorter in the seat than typically modern sofas are. Happily for me, they've said yes, and even more happily, it's turned out like this, which I think is stylish enough, and it looks like being a success. So I'm thrilled to bits with this. This is called April. We're sitting in a rather ancient building, but full of modern things, and it's a peculiarly English phenomena, I think, that we like that mixture, and so we're here particularly because we've launched at Anglepoise, using one of my designs, we've launched a partnership with Paul Smith. Paul's an old friend, he's also a sir, so these two old sirs together have come together in a new product.
Name's Grange, Kenneth Grange, and I design things for a living, almost anything. I've done 2 major pieces of transport. One's the taxi and one's the train. When I designed the train, there was nothing like it on the railways of this country, and we hadn't a modern train for 50 years, because frankly when I designed that train, everything about the railways was terribly old-fashioned. We happened to settle on a design that stood the test of time. It's still out there, and to be perfectly frank, it's immodest, but it's quite true that if I stand on the platform at Exeter and in comes my train, my little chest puffs up and I feel pretty good. I don't think I could claim to have a design philosophy. I'm passionate about construction. I love making things, and I'm therefore very, very interested in how everything is made. We have one of the most sophisticated design education systems in the world. I'm presently a visiting professor at the Royal College of Art, which I immensely enjoy, and the talent that's coming through that place is mind-boggling. One of the, as it were, downsides of that is there are more designers than there are opportunities, and that's a truth. It does is, of course, raise the bar. For the most part, everybody you know, all your fellow designers, they'll all be decent people. I don't know a scallywag, as we call them, in our world at all. I doubt whether you could honestly say the same if you were talking to a business community or a financial community, but in our world it's still the truth. We're quite an inventive society, quite a creative society. Now, the outlook, the actual financial outlook, isn't terribly rosy. It's not a time of great comfort in this respect. But I think there is a determination to somehow get the better of it, to somehow win. Just watch this space, because I think it's a rich one.
And you know, Paul Smith's very skilled and very famous, I would say, and particularly in foreign markets, for his very sort of vivacious but appropriate and appropriately stylish use of colour. So I think he wouldn't describe himself as a fashionista, as a sort of high style designer, but he's got a very, very good eye for the use of colour in intelligent products. So his suits are intelligent, his garments are intelligent, they always have a lovely freshness about them, which is all to do with colour. So in this new lamp of ours, form is mine, and the decoration, the coloration is his. It's a very nice partnership. I'm thrilled to bits with it. The question of style and changing styles over the years is, you know, a constant discussion. But there's a few undeniable importances in the design of anything in my book, and they are to do with its decent function. Some products are very, very conspicuous in the need for the functional element, like cutlery, for example. I mean, if cutlery is not comfortable to hold, it is worthless in my view. On the other hand, if it's elegant and still a pleasure to hold, it's the best of both worlds. So that's their unchanging demands, no matter how old the product is. And you could look at some products of mine and a lot of other designers more eminent than I, whose products have stood the test of time and will still stand the same test in 20, 50 years from now, because they are stylish, appropriately stylish, and not so conspicuous that they are made to look foolish according to the fashion of the time.
My very first job was a month or two working as a scene painter for television at Alexandra Palace. Then I got a job in an architectural office, and that was my first introduction to modernism and to what we call design. It's inevitably developed as the society's got more affluent. So, like a lot of other consequences of affluence, it isn't all better. Things get taken for granted, culture of waste grows up, which sticks in my throat, and certainly in my generation's throat. Underlying it all, it's just silly, it's immature, I think, and we get more immature as we get wealthier. There's a magazine called How to Spend It, which I think is the most offensive title for a magazine I've ever read. I hate the bloody thing. I'd been asked to design the interior of an exhibition building for my previous employer. I was arranging some cameras, just like window dressing, and we were ahead of time, so I was feeling a bit light-hearted, and I said something jokey about great job, but the cameras are so ugly. And a man nearby said, really, if that company wanted to design a new camera, how much would it cost? And I still, not thinking much about it, said probably, I don't know what I said, but perhaps £100, a couple of £100. And that was it. And I carried on arranging the cameras and larking about. The next morning I was back in London. This was in Geneva, the conversation. Back in London the following morning, the telephone rang and a man said, I understand you're going to design a camera for us. And I'm the development director at Kodak.
There were very few of us, and I managed to build a reputation by the funny accident of being asked to do a big variety of things. You name it, I did almost anything in sight.
From kitchen appliances to parking meters, from disposable razors to bus shelters.
How many drops of rain have I saved for falling on people? And if it's not quite a big enough roof to keep them all dry, I've got to have a good answer for that.
In the post-war era, Kenneth Grange has been Britain's moderniser-in-chief.
Silly, isn't it? Such a simple thing, but how sharp you can make this cut-off here, the actual importance in the whole thing, and therefore what the designer ought to spend a lot of time worrying about is how well it pours.
Kenneth Grange believes that designers should have to live with what they design.
You'll notice a big mouth here to get the water in easily. Very important.
And for the past 20 years, he's been using the Kenwood kettle he designed to make himself tea, along with millions of others around the world.